All right, guys, it is May 23rd, 2023, and I got to tell you about a movie I watched this past weekend that I had so much fun with, and I want to recommend it to you. We had seen The Cocaine Bear. All right, it was just it's one of the funniest things I've watched in a long time. If you're looking for something to distract yourself with, you just need to get your mind off of something. Watch this movie because if I don't know, it all comes down to the person. But for me, I about cracked a rib laughing so hard, man. This is a great movie. Now it's been talked about quite a bit. A lot of people know that it's out there, and I had first heard about the true story behind Cocaine Bear from Mr. Ballin on YouTube. Now the movie strays very, very far from the real life story of Cocaine Bear. But let me tell you, let me give you some of the details that Mr. Ballin shared because he actually tells you more about the story than you're ever going to find in any kind of press reports or anything. They leave so much out. But here's how he told it. So back in 1985, a man named Andrew Thornton, he was an ex-narcotics officer turned drug smuggler. Okay, he had a twin-engine airplane he filled with 40 plastic cases of cocaine, lots of cocaine, and it was actually too heavy for the airplane, so they say. But anyway, him and his friend were going to go from point A to point B. Now, the friend apparently had no idea that Andrew Thornton was a drug smuggler. Okay, now authorities even believe this. All right, so it's not it's not up for debate as far as they're concerned. But they were flying at night, and they were somewhere of the Blue Ridge Mountains in Georgia, and they noticed that there was a couple of airplanes following them. They knew that this just doesn't happen. That just doesn't occur unless there's something afoot. And so it was questioned, and Andrew Thornton said, "Well, put these parachutes on. I know why they're following us." Not a great feeling, right? I mean, if you're the friend, I don't know if the friend had ever skydived before, but Andrew Thornton had been in the 101st Airborne Division when he served in the military. So he was certainly familiarized with skydiving. Well, anyway, this like I said, this occurred at night, and he told him to just jump. This is after they threw out at least a lot of the cocaine, and it scattered. All these packages of cocaine scattered somewhere in the mountains in Georgia. And so they jumped out. Andrew Thornton's chute apparently did not open correctly, and somebody came out of their house the next morning and found his dead body in the driveway. And he was wearing night vision goggles. He had all sorts of weird paraphernalia on him to indicate that he was well prepared for a situation like this, except that his chute didn't open. And so they linked his body back to the crashed airplane, realized who he was. The friend was questioned. He was never indicted, never served any time because he didn't know anything about what was actually going on. Now, in the meantime, a 175-pound black bear had found this cocaine, okay? And he'd ingested a lot of it. In fact, he died shortly after he ate it. When his body was opened up, they described him as being filled to the brim with cocaine. His body was stuffed. At one time, it was owned by Waylon Jennings. And then you can find it now at the Kentucky Fun Mall in Lexington, Kentucky. So that's the real story behind the Cocaine Bear. But the movie, like I said, strays off the path, and they turn Cocaine Bear into this murderous, rampaging bear, homicidal bear. And the movie is just, oh my word, it's bloody, but it's one of the most fun movies I've ever watched, and I'll watch it over and over again because I couldn't stop laughing. It was great. It was great. Now, here's the thing. Because this movie takes place back in 1985, they did a really good job of making it look like you're watching a movie from the 1980s, and it felt nostalgic to me because it was very campy. The actors deliberately kind of didn't act their parts that well. I mean, it was because it was supposed to be ridiculous. Okay, so it was just, it was absolutely absurd. But man, when I was describing it to my brother, I had a hard time not dying because it was great. It was great. But anyway, so I highly recommend this movie. But going back to what I was saying, it made me feel nostalgic. So I started thinking about all the funny movies that I liked back in the 1980s. I'm going to give you a few. Now I wrote down. I was going to give you my top 10 favorite 1980s funny movies, but I actually ended up writing down 12 because there's just a couple I just couldn't leave out. So here's what I recommend. So if you haven't watched, if you're somebody who just doesn't watch anything from the 80s, if you're only somebody who watches current things, you're going to want to know about these. Many people have seen these. They have a lot of opinions about them. If you have a list of movies, you're going to come up with something different than me probably. But here's the ones that I really like a lot and I recommend. And so take a gander at these. You can find them just about anywhere. All right. My first one on the list was Caddyshack from 1980 with Bill Murray, Rodney Dangerfield, Ted Knight, Chevy Chase. And there's a long list of well-known people in that movie. And, there's this kid in the movie. I can't remember what his name is now. He's saving money for college. He goes to work at a golf course. He's caddying for Ted Knight's character, who's rich in this movie and just very pompous. And things just really go amiss. Bill Murray is the groundskeeper. He's having a hard time because this gopher it just keeps wreaking havoc on his golf course. And really, to me, the gopher is one of the most lovable characters in the movie, especially at the end of the movie when he's dancing to Kenny Loggins' song "I'm All Right." That's great. Anyway, so Caddyshack is a fun movie to watch. Dirty Rotten Scoundrels from 1988 is another one of my favorite ones. Steve Martin, Michael Caine are a couple of con men, but Michael Caine's been living in this nice, I think it's a French resort. I think it's French. Anyway, he's been living in this French resort, living as a con man for a long time, bilking people out of their money, especially women, rich women. But then Steve Martin, this guy comes along who's not from around there, and he tries to apply his own trade, his own craft locally. But he falls into competition with Michael Caine, and they decide who's the better man as far as this is concerned. And Dirty Rotten Scoundrels is really fun to watch. Glenn Headley plays in it, and her role is pretty hilarious. The Dream Team is another one that I highly recommend. Now, this movie, I've talked about it before. Michael Caine, Peter Boyle, Christopher Lloyd, and there's another, I can't remember the other guy's name, but this movie was made in 1989. This takes place, these characters are mental asylum patients. Okay, and their counselor or their doctor, whatever you want to call him, he wants to take them to a New York Yankees game. They get in this van, they take off. These two corrupt cops kind of get in the way. They preoccupy in a manner of speaking the doctor, and so these four individuals are left with having to fend for themselves and get back home. And Michael Keaton just does a wonderful job of being the really crazy one. Like you gotta watch out because it can be kind of violent. But the movie is a lot of fun. Then there's Raising Arizona. There's a lot of people who haven't seen this movie, and it really surprises me. Nicolas Cage. I don't know if this was his big movie that made him famous, but man, this movie's crazy. Nicolas Cage and what's her name? I can't think of her name. Holly. Is it Holly Hunter? I'm not remembering if I'm recalling that right. Anyway, there are a couple who want to have a baby so bad, but for some reason they're unable to, and she'll do anything to have a baby. But she's a cop. But they end up stealing a baby from a wealthy local businessman, and there's a bounty hunter involved. Escaped prisoners and this cute baby, and Nicolas Cage and I think her name is Holly Hunter. Yeah, they're just so funny in the movie. It's just great. I mean, to me, this is one of Nicolas Cage's finest acting movies, in my opinion. Then there's Airplane, of course. A lot of people have seen this. Back in the 1970s, there was a slew of airplane movies, or at least a handful of airplane movies. They were captivated back then by sinking ships and diving airplanes, and people. I remember people being actually scared of this quite a bit, and so they came out with this movie to kind of make fun of it all. And Leslie Nielsen's in it, and he's pretty much the luminary of this movie. Of course, he was also in The Naked Gun, which came out in 1988, and I thought that was from the 1990s, but it's 1988. Naked Gun with Leslie Nielsen. He plays Lieutenant Frank Drebin. This was actually a police series. I can't remember if the name was different or not, but man, Leslie Nielsen had a lot of talent when it came to playing a bumbling, nonsensical cop. And then there was The Money Pit with Tom Hanks and Shelley Long. Yeah, who played in Cheers. That's a fun movie to watch because, well, Tom Hanks is just great in comedy anyway. And so they acquire this home, this, idyllic home for a good deal. They get a good deal on it, but it's almost too good to be true. And they realize why. And it's just something it just keeps, nothing goes right. Everything keeps falling apart on them. And the way it's handled, some of the scenes in that movie will just have you falling on the floor. And then there's Skin Deep. Skin Deep, a lot of people don't know about this movie, but John Ritter, who, became very popular for Three's Company, his physical comedy is quite well known. Well, at least it was well known back then. He's very demonstrative. Well, he plays this writer who's got writer's block, but he's also a womanizer, and he can't seem to keep his hands to himself, and therefore he gets into a lot of trouble. His wife and all these other women find out what he's doing, and they try to make him pay for it, and they do, and it's severe, and it's a lot of fun. He gets in so much trouble in this movie. And John Ritter is one of the most fun people to watch in something like this. And it's too bad he's gone now. He passed away of an aortic aneurysm, which is what my dad had. And then there's Stripes. It was made back in 1981. Bill Murray, Harold Ramis, and some of the other people. And Stripes was fun because back then people were still scared of the Cold War. And you got these two guys. You get these two guys who decide that they're not doing anything else in their life. So they voluntarily go into the army and try to make something of themselves, and they're just idiots, This is where I really began to like Harold Ramis a lot, but I'm a big Bill Murray fan anyway. I recommend watching Stripes. And then there's one called The Private Eyes. I think it's been forgotten by a lot of people. This was made back in 1980. It's a Sherlock Holmes spoof starring Tim Conway and Don Knotts. Tim Conway, one of my favorite comedians ever. He was always on the Carol Burnett show. He was in a lot of Disney movies that were just funny. I think they were considered Disney movies back then, but he's hilarious. So watch The Private Eyes. If you can find it, get it, stream it, whatever you have to do. I haven't seen it in so many years. I don't know if I'd have the same opinion about it now if I watched it, but it was fun then. And then there's a couple more that I threw in here just because I had to. 9 to 5, Dolly Parton, Jane Fonda, and Lily Tomlin, along with Dabney Coleman, who is this, he's this offensive, intrusive, slimy boss that has three women working under him that are kind of fed up with the way he is, and then they get back up, and that's a real fun movie to watch too. And man, Dolly Parton back then, man, she was something. She was really something. Wow. Anyway, that's actually the 11th movie I put on here. And then, of course, Christmas Vacation, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. You can't watch that movie too many times. That's great. That's great. But anyway, those are some of my recommendations. If you haven't seen any of them so far, write those down. What are some of your favorite funny 80s movies? Maybe there's some I haven't thought of. I know my brother said Revenge of the Nerds. I've never actually seen that. It's going to surprise some of you, I know. And I've never seen Porky's either. And I always wanted to, but you got to remember back when I was a kid and those had been out long enough to be on TV, they were still considered pretty dirty. And I was pretty young. And my parents would have killed me if I had been caught watching Porky's. But don't think I didn't want to. Of course, there's Animal House. Those might be earlier than the 1980s, though. That might be late 1970s. But anyway, what are your favorite funny 80s movies? I'd like to know. Leave a comment down below. Make sure you subscribe. Hit the like button. All right? And don't forget to hit the notification bell. And I think that's it, guys. It's all for today. All right. watch Cocaine Bear. Let me know what you thought. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great day.